Before we descend into the darkness together, make sure to leave a like and let us know where you're watching from. This story, it's one that's haunted me for years. What happened in those Nevada caves in 1906 defies explanation, and by the end, you'll understand why some places should remain sealed forever. Asterisk, my name is Thomas Brennan, and in the winter of 1906, I was 23 years old and foolish enough to believe I understood the world. I'd been working the coal mines outside of Winnemucca, Nevada, for nearly 2 years, and I thought I'd seen everything the earth could show a man. Caverns that buried men alive, gas pockets that exploded without warning, heat so intense you could feel your lungs cooking with every breath, men crushed under tons of rock, their screams cut short in an instant. I was wrong. I hadn't seen anything yet. The mine where I worked, we called it the Serpent's Belly, though I never knew if that was official or just something the men started saying. Cut deep into the hills about 15 miles north of town. It was brutal country, the kind that looks beautiful from a distance. All purple mountains and endless sky, but reveals itself up close as nothing but rock, dust, and death. Rattlesnakes coiled in the shade. Scorpions under every rock. Heat stroke in summer, frostbite in winter. Our crew numbered 16 men, give or take, depending on who'd gotten hurt or drunk or disappeared in the night. Our foreman was a thick-necked Irishman named Patrick Callahan, who'd been mining since he was 8 years old. He had the scars and missing fingers to prove it, 3 gone from his left hand to from his right. He ran the operation with an iron fist. Work started before dawn and didn't stop until sunset painted the sky red, and God help you if you complained. The work was simple, brutal, repetitive. Drill into the rock face. Pack it with dynamite. Light the fuse and run. Wait for the explosion. Go back in and haul out the coal. Then do it again and again. Day after day, week after week, month after month. We were pushing deeper into the mountain, following a seam of coal that Callahan swore would make us all rich. We lived in a camp of canvas tents and wooden shacks that leaked when it rained and froze when it didn't. We slept on cots that smelled like sweat and tobacco and old blood. We ate beans and hardtack and whatever rabbits or birds we could shoot when we had the energy after a 12-hour shift. We drank whiskey when we could afford it and water when we couldn't. It was a hard life, a short life for many, but it was honest work, or so I told myself. My mother back in Pennsylvania needed the money I sent home every month. My father had died in a mine collapse when I was 14, and I'd promised myself I'd take care of her. So I swung the pickaxe and breathed the dust and told myself it would all be worth it someday. The other men, they were the usual mix you'd find in any mining camp. Davies was a Welshman with a permanent scowl and stories about mines back home that went back to Roman times. Kowalski was a massive Polish immigrant who barely spoke English but could lift twice what any other man could. Martinez was a wiry Mexican fellow with quick hands and quicker eyes. Nothing got past him. Then there was old Samuel, who claimed to be 60 but looked 80. He'd been mining longer than anyone, and he had a habit of talking to himself in the tunnels. We all thought he was touched in the head, but he knew the earth better than any man I'd ever met. He could smell gas before the canaries died. He could hear a support beam starting to crack before it gave way. More than once, his warnings had saved lives. But that Tuesday morning in late January, even Samuel's instincts couldn't prepare us for what we were about to find. Asterisk, asterisk. Everything changed on that Tuesday morning in late January. I remember the date exactly, January 23rd, 1906, because it was my mother's birthday, and I'd been thinking about her all morning, wondering if the letter I'd sent had reached Pennsylvania yet. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe, each inhalation like swallowing knives. Our breath came out in great white clouds as we trudged up the narrow path to the mine entrance, our boots crunching on frost-covered ground. Callahan was waiting for us at the mouth of the Serpent's belly, which was unusual. He normally went in first to check the supports and test for gas, but this morning he stood outside, hands on his hips, staring at the dark opening like it had personally insulted him. His face was pale in the pre-dawn light, and there was something in his expression I'd never seen before. Excitement, maybe, or fear disguised as excitement. "Listen up," he barked as we gathered around him, stamping our feet against the cold. "We're going deeper today, much deeper." A collective groan rose from the men. Going deeper meant more walking in the dark, more hauling of coal over longer distances, more time away from daylight and fresh air. "Shut it," Callahan snapped. "We've hit the end of the current seam. It's playing out, getting thin. But yesterday evening, after the rest of you left, I stayed behind to do some exploring. Found something interesting." He paused for dramatic effect, his breath steaming. "There's a crack in the eastern wall of the deepest tunnel, maybe 3 feet wide. I got a lamp in there and saw it opens up. Way up could be a whole new chamber. Could be the mother lode we've been looking for. Could be nothing," Davies muttered, pulling his coat tighter against the wind. "Could be a dead end after 50 feet. Could be," Callahan agreed, his jaw set. "But we're damn well going to find out. Brennan, you're with me. Davies, Kowalski, Martinez, and Samuel too. The rest of you, keep working the current face. If we find something good, we'll send word and you can join us." That's how I became one of the first 6 men to discover what lived in the deep places of the earth. We lit our lamps and entered the mine. The familiar smell hit me immediately: coal dust, old sweat, rock, and that peculiar metallic taste that all deep mines have. The dampness that coats your throat and lungs. We walked in silence, our boots echoing off the walls, our lamps creating dancing shadows that seemed almost alive. The main tunnel sloped downward at a steady angle, the walls showing the marks of our drilling and blasting. Support beams stood every 20 feet, rough-cut timber that creaked and groaned under the weight of the mountain above us. I'd walked this tunnel hundreds of times, but that morning it felt different, oppressive, like the mountain was watching us. "You feel that?" Martinez asked quietly as we descended. He was walking beside me, his lamp held high. "Feel what?" "The air. It's different." He was right. The air in the tunnel was usually still and dead, but today there was a subtle movement to it. A draft so faint you could barely feel it, but it was there. Cool air flowing past us, deeper into the mine. "Air's moving," Kowalski rumbled from behind us. "Means there's an opening somewhere. A way for air to flow." "Exactly what I thought," Callahan said from the front. "That crack I found, there's wind coming from it. Strong wind. Means it goes somewhere. Somewhere big." Old Samuel hadn't said anything since we'd entered the tunnel. He walked at the rear of our group, his lamp swinging slowly from side to side, and I noticed his lips were moving. He was muttering something under his breath, too quiet to hear. Praying. Maybe it took us 25 minutes to reach the deepest point of the mine. the face where we'd been working for the past 3 weeks. Here the seam of coal was thin and fractured, barely worth the effort of extraction. The tunnel ended in a rough wall of rock and coal, and there, just as Callahan had described, was a vertical crack in the eastern wall. It looked like the earth had simply split open. The crack was about 3 feet wide at its widest point, and maybe 7 feet high tall, enough to walk through if you turned sideways. Darkness yawned beyond it, absolute and hungry. And from that darkness came a steady breeze, cool and somehow ... different. It didn't smell like the rest of the mine. It smelled older, ancient. There, Callahan said, gesturing with his lamp. That wasn't there a week ago. The blasting must have opened it up. Yesterday I stuck my head in and saw it goes back at least 50 feet, then opens up into something bigger. Today we're going to find out what. Maybe we shouldn't, Samuel said suddenly. His voice was hoarse, cracked with age and coal dust. Some things are buried for a reason. Don't start with your superstitions, old man, Davies snapped. It's just a cave. You feel the air. Samuel insisted. That's not right. That's not natural. The earth breathes different down there. The earth doesn't breathe at all, Callahan said firmly. It's just air circulation. Basic geology. Now, are you coming or not? Samuel looked at the crack for a long moment, his lamp illuminating the rough edges of the opening. Finally, he nodded slowly. I'm coming. Someone's got to bear witness. Witness to what? I asked, but Samuel just shook his head and didn't answer. Callahan went first, squeezing himself sideways into the crack. His lamp disappeared into the darkness, leaving only a faint glow. Come on, his voice echoed back. It's tight but manageable. One by one, we followed him into the crack. The passage was claustrophobic. The walls pressed in on both sides, rough and cold, scraping against my shoulders and back as I shuffled sideways. My lamp swung wildly, creating disorienting flashes of light and shadow. I could hear the breathing of the men ahead and behind me, rapid and shallow. Even Kowalski, who feared nothing, was breathing hard. The rock here was different from the coal seam, darker, harder, almost black, with a strange texture that caught the lamplight in odd ways. When I ran my hand along it, which I had to do for balance, it felt wrong somehow. Too smooth in places, too rough in others, and it was cold. Not the normal coolness of underground rock, but a deeper cold that seemed to leach the warmth from my fingers. This rock, Martinez said from behind me. It's not sedimentary. It's igneous, volcanic. This whole formation is volcanic. So, Davies called from somewhere ahead. So we're not supposed to have volcanic rock this deep in a coal mine. Coal forms in sedimentary basins. This doesn't make sense geologically. Worry about the geology later, Callahan's voice echoed back. We're almost through. He was right. After another 20 feet of squeezing through that suffocating passage, I felt the space around me suddenly expand. The walls fell away, the ceiling lifted, and I stumbled forward onto a ledge of solid rock and found myself standing on the edge of an abyss. Asterisk, sweet Jesus. I whispered. The cavern before us was enormous, vast. Our lamps couldn't find the far wall. The light just disappeared into darkness. The ceiling was invisible somewhere high above us, and below, maybe 30 or 40 feet down, I could see the cavern floor, or at least a portion of it. The ledge we stood on was the beginning of a natural spiral pathway that wound down the cavern wall like a giant staircase. Nobody's been here, Kowalski said, his voice filled with wonder. Nobody's ever seen this. Look at the walls, Martinez said, holding his lamp close to the rock face beside us. These aren't natural formations. Look, you see those marks? I looked where he was pointing. The wall of the cavern wasn't smooth, which was covered in shallow grooves and ridges, running in parallel lines that curved and spiraled. They were too regular to be natural erosion, too deliberate. Tool marks, Davies breathed. Something carved these walls. Don't be ridiculous, Callahan said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's just geological formation, water erosion or something. Water doesn't erode in straight lines, Martinez countered, and water doesn't carve spirals. Maybe ancient people, I suggested. Indians, hundreds of years ago, with what tools? Martinez asked. You'd need metal tools to carve this rock. Hard metal. And you'd need thousands of men working for years. Look how big this cavern is. Old Samuel hadn't moved from the mouth of the passage. He stood there with his lamp held high, slowly panning it across the vast darkness before us. His lips were still moving in that silent prayer or curse. Samuel. I called. You all right? We should go back, he said quietly. We just got here, Callahan snapped. We should go back now. Right now. Seal that passage with dynamite and never speak of this place again. Why? I asked, moving closer to him. What's wrong? Samuel looked at me, and in the lamplight I saw genuine fear in his old eyes. I've been mining for 47 years, he said. Worked mines in Wales, in Pennsylvania, in Colorado. I've seen things that would make your hair white. Cave-ins, floods, fires, gas, explosions. I've pulled dead men from collapsed tunnels and watched good men die screaming in the dark. But I've never... He paused, swallowing hard. I've never felt anything like this place. It's wrong. The air is wrong. The rock is wrong. The silence is wrong. It's just a cave, Davies said, but he didn't sound certain. Listen, Samuel hissed. We all fell silent. I held my breath, straining my ears, and that's when I realized what Samuel meant. The silence wasn't right. In a normal cave, there are sounds: water dripping, rocks settling, the echo of your own breathing. But this cavern was absolutely silent. No drips, no echoes, nothing. It was like the darkness swallowed sound itself. Air's still moving though, Martinez said, holding up his hand. Feel it, coming up from below. There must be another opening down there, maybe even a way out. That seemed to decide Callahan. We're going down, he announced. Could be valuable minerals down there. Could be more coal. Could be something that makes us all rich. Samuel, if you want to wait here, fine. The rest of you, follow me. He started down the spiral path, his lamp swinging. After a moment's hesitation, Davies followed, then Kowalski, then Martinez. I looked at Samuel. You coming? The old man sighed deeply. Someone has to watch over you fools, he muttered, and stepped onto the path behind me. The descent took longer than I expected. The spiral path was narrow, maybe 4 feet wide, with the cavern wall on one side and a sheer drop on the other. There was no railing, no safety rope, nothing but your own balance between solid ground and oblivion. We moved slowly, testing each step, our lamps creating wild shadows that made it hard to judge distances. As we descended, I began to notice more details about the cavern. The walls weren't just carved with those strange parallel grooves. There were other markings too. Symbols, maybe, or just random scratches. They were shallow and weathered, hard to make out in the lamplight, but they covered nearly every surface. Some looked almost like writing, angular characters that reminded me of nothing I'd ever seen. Others were more pictographic, rude drawings of stick figures and animals and shapes that might have been mountains or flames. "Look at this," Martinez said, stopping to examine a section of wall. His lamp illuminated what looked like a large carving, maybe 3 feet tall. It showed a humanoid figure, but wrong. The proportions were off. The head was too large, triangular, with large circular eyes. The body was elongated, the limbs too thin. And all around it, smaller figures seemed to be bowing or kneeling. "Just primitive art," Davies said dismissively, but he hurried past it anyway. We continued down, after what felt like an hour but was probably only 20 minutes. The path finally leveled out and we reached the cavern floor. The floor was smooth. Not naturally smooth, like it had been worked flat by hand, or by something with hands. Our lamps revealed a vast open space stretching away in all directions. The ceiling was still invisible above us, lost in darkness. "Spread out," Callahan ordered. "Look for coal seams, mineral deposits, anything valuable. But stay within sight of each other's lamps. This place is too big to get lost in." We fanned out across the smooth floor, our lamps creating small islands of light in the vast darkness. I moved slowly, examining the ground, the walls, looking for anything that might be worth mining. But I found nothing. No coal, no visible minerals. Just that strange black rock, smooth and cold. What I did find were more carvings. The floor was covered with them. Not everywhere they appeared in clusters, like someone had worked intensely in certain areas and left others blank. I knelt down to examine one cluster, running my fingers over the shallow grooves. They were definitely writing, or something like writing. The characters were angular, geometric, nothing like any alphabet I knew. They were arranged in lines that ran from right to left, or maybe top to bottom, I couldn't tell. And between the lines of text were more of those pictographs. I saw the strange humanoid figures again, dozens of them. And I saw other things, shapes that might have been buildings or structures, arranged in patterns that suggested a city. A civilization. "Callahan," I called out. "You need to see this." The others gathered around as I pointed out the carvings with my lamp. For a long moment, nobody spoke. "It's a city," Martinez finally said. "They carved a map of their city. Who's they?" Davies demanded. "There's never been a civilization here. Indians didn't build cities underground. They didn't have writing like this. Then who did?" I asked. Nobody had an answer. "Look here," Kowalski rumbled, pointing to another section of carvings a few feet away. More pictures. We moved over to where he stood. This area showed a different scene, the humanoid figures again, but these were different. They were shown in what looked like a processional, carrying something between them. The object was circular, with rays or spikes radiating from it. A sun, maybe, or a star. And ahead of the procession, the carvings showed an opening, a tunnel or passage with more of those strange characters around it. "They're bringing something to the tunnel," Martinez said, tracing the images with his finger, like an offering, or a sacrifice, or a warning, Samuel said quietly. He'd been standing apart from us, his lamp held low, staring at something on the floor. "Come, look at this." We joined him and immediately understood why his voice sounded so shaken. The carving Samuel had found was larger than the others, maybe 10 feet across, carved deeper into the smooth stone floor. It showed a scene of chaos and violence. The humanoid figures were everywhere, but they were running, fleeing from something. And that something, ... I still see it in my nightmares. The carving showed a creature or creatures. It was hard to tell where one ended and another began that dwarfed the humanoid figures. The artist had carved it with savage detail, despite the primitive style. It had a body like a massive serpent or lizard, but it stood upright on 2 powerful legs. The arms were long and ended in what looked like claws. The head was triangular, reptilian, with a mouth full of teeth. But the worst part was the eyes. The artist had carved them large and deep, and even in carved stone they seemed to stare with an intelligence that was utterly alien, and there were many of them. The carving showed these creatures tearing through the humanoid figures, destroying what looked like buildings, creating devastation. It was a scene of massacre. "Jesus Christ," Davies whispered. "It's just mythology," Callahan said, but his voice was uncertain now. "Every primitive culture has monster stories. Dragons, demons, whatever. It doesn't mean anything." "Then why seal the tunnel?" Samuel asked, pointing to another part of the carving. It showed the surviving humanoid figures blocking the entrance to a passage with rocks. And above it were characters that looked different from the others, larger, bolder, carved so deep they'd last forever. "Why leave warnings?" "You're reading too much into it," Callahan insisted. "It's just," he was interrupted by a sound. We all froze, our lamps suddenly still. In that vast silence, the sound was unmistakable. It was a scraping noise, like stone grinding against stone, coming from somewhere deeper in the cavern. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, then stopped. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Rock settling," Davies said quickly. "Just the mountain shifting. Happens all the time in mines." "Not like that, it doesn't," Samuel said. "That was deliberate, controlled." "You're imagining things, old man," Callahan snapped, but I could hear the edge in his voice. He was scared too. The sound came again, scraping, dragging. "Closer now. Maybe we should head back," I suggested, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've seen enough for today. We can come back with more men, more lamps. We're not running from noises in the dark like frightened children," Callahan interrupted. But his hand, I noticed, was gripping his pickaxe tightly. "There," Kowalski said suddenly, pointing into the darkness ahead. "Light." He was right. Far across the cavern floor, maybe 200 yards away, there was a faint glow. Not lamplight, this was different, softer, greenish. It pulsed slightly, like something breathing. "Phosphorescence," Martinez said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Some minerals glow in the dark." "Probably just that. Phosphorescent minerals don't pulse," Samuel said flatly. We stood there in a tight group, our lamps held high, staring at that distant glow. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to get back up that spiral path and out of this cursed place. But something else, curiosity, stupidity, or maybe just masculine pride, kept my feet rooted to the spot. The scraping sound came again, definitely closer, and now I could hear something else underneath. It a sound like breathing, but wrong. Too deep, too slow. Like something massive drawing air into lungs the size of barrels. "We're leaving," Samuel announced. "Right now? Anyone with sense will follow me." He turned and started walking quickly back toward the spiral path, his lamp swinging wildly. For a moment, I almost followed him. But then Callahan spoke. 5 more minutes, he said. We'll check out that glow, see what's causing it, and then we head back. But I'm not leaving without knowing what's down here. You're a fool, Callahan, Samuel called back, not stopping. You're going to get these boys killed, then wait for us at the top, Callahan shouted. He looked at the rest of us. Well, who's with me? I should have followed Samuel. God knows I should have. But I stayed. We all did, me, Davies, Kowalski, and Martinez. We stood there like idiots and watched Samuel's lamp grow smaller as he hurried back toward the path. And then we turned and walked toward that pulsing green glow. The cavern floor wasn't as smooth as I'd first thought. As we walked, I began to notice irregularities, depressions, and rises. Patterns that suggested something had been built here once and then destroyed, leaving only subtle traces. We passed several of those large carvings in the floor, each one showing similar scenes of the lizard creatures attacking the humanoid figures. These pictures, Martinez said as we walked. They're telling a story, a history. The humanoid figures, they lived here, built a civilization underground. And then something happened. These creatures came, or were already here, and he gestured at a carving showing burning buildings and bodies. Genocide? But it's thousands of years old, I said. Has to be. Look how worn the carvings are. Older than that, maybe, Martinez agreed. This rock formation could be millions of years old. Which means nothing, Callahan interrupted. Because people didn't exist millions of years ago. So these carvings are either much newer than they look, or they're just random scratches that we're interpreting as pictures. Our brains seeing patterns that aren't there. You really believe that? Davies asked. Callahan didn't answer. We kept walking. The green glow grew brighter as we approached. It was coming from an opening in the far wall of the cavern, other tunnel or passage. The glow pulsed in a steady rhythm, bright then dim, like a heartbeat. And the breathing sound was definitely coming from there too. We stopped maybe 50 feet from the opening, our lamps illuminating its edges. The tunnel mouth was large, maybe 15 feet high and 10 feet wide. More of those strange characters were carved around it, deep and deliberate, and in the center, directly above the opening, was a carving that made my blood run cold. It was one of the lizard creatures, carved in profile, twice life-size. But, unlike the other carvings, which were primitive and rough, this one was rendered in exquisite detail. Every scale was visible, every tooth in that terrible mouth, every claw on those powerful hands. The eyes were carved so deeply they seemed like actual holes in the rock. And the way it was positioned, standing upright, arms outstretched, made it look almost like a guardian, or a warning. We're not going in there, Davies said flatly. I don't care what you say, Callahan. I'm not going in there. Nobody's going in, I agreed quickly. We've seen enough. Let's head back. But Callahan wasn't listening. He was staring at the tunnel mouth with an expression I couldn't quite read. Greed, curiosity, fear. Maybe all three. There's something in there, he said slowly. Something valuable. That's why they sealed this place. Not because of monsters or lizard people or whatever nonsense is carved on these walls. Because there's something worth protecting. Gold, maybe. Or gemstones. Something the old civilization mined here, or something that mined them, Martinez muttered. I'm going to look, Callahan announced. "You lot can wait here if you want, but I'm going to look." He started walking toward the tunnel mouth. None of us moved to follow him. "Callahan, don't be stupid," I called after him. He ignored me. He reached the opening and paused there, his lamp held high. The green glow pulsed around him, making his shadow dance and stretch. For a moment he just stood there, peering into the tunnel. Then he took a step forward, crossing the threshold, and something moved in the darkness beyond. It happened so fast. One moment Callahan was standing in the tunnel mouth, his lamp illuminating rough rock walls. The next moment, something massive lunged from the darkness and grabbed him. I heard him scream a sound of pure terror that echoed through the vast cavern. His lamp fell, rolling across the stone floor, its light spinning wildly, and in that spinning light, I saw it. The creature was enormous, 8 feet tall at least, maybe more. It moved on to powerful legs, its body covered in scales that gleamed an oily greenish black in the lamplight. The arms were long and muscular, ending in hands with 6 fingers tipped with curved claws. The head was triangular, reptilian, with eyes that caught the light and reflected it back like a cat's, and the mouth was full of teeth like daggers. It had Callahan in its grip, one massive hand wrapped around his chest. He was screaming, thrashing, beating at the creature with his fists, but he might as well have been hitting stone. The creature lifted him effortlessly, brought him close to that terrible face, and ... I can't describe the sound Callahan made. It wasn't quite a scream. It was something beyond a scream. The creature had opened its mouth impossibly wide, and I saw a tongue long and forked snake out and touch Callahan's face. He went rigid, his screams cutting off abruptly. The creature tilted its head, studying him with those alien eyes. "Run!" Davy screamed. We ran. I've never moved so fast in my life. We sprinted across that smooth cavern floor, our lamps swinging wildly, the darkness seeming to chase us. Behind us, I could hear sounds Callahan screaming again, the creature making a noise like a hiss mixed with a rumble, and other sounds I couldn't identify, scraping, movement, more than one set of footsteps, the path. Kowalski shouted, pointing ahead. There. The spiral path was visible in our lamplight, the beginning of our escape. We reached it and started climbing, taking the narrow path as fast as we dared. One slip would send us tumbling into the abyss, but the alternative, staying on that cavern floor, was worse. I was in the rear, Martinez ahead of me, then Kowalski, then Davies in the lead. As I climbed, I couldn't help but glance back down into the cavern. The green glow from the tunnel was brighter now, pulsing faster, and in that light, I saw them. There were more of them, many more. They were emerging from the tunnel mouth, one after another, their scales catching the light. Some moved on to legs like the first one. Others moved on all fours, faster and more agile. They were different sizes, some massive, like the first creature, others smaller, maybe 5 or 6 feet tall. But they all had those triangular heads, those terrible eyes, those clawed hands, and they were looking up at us. "Climb!" I shouted. "Climb faster!" We scrambled up the spiral path, our lungs burning, our legs screaming in protest. The path seemed endless. Every turn revealed another stretch of narrow rock between us and safety. Our lamps created dizzying shadows on the cavern wall, making it hard to judge distances. Behind us, I heard new sounds, clicking, hissing, and something that sounded almost like words, but in no language I'd ever heard. The sounds echoed through the cavern, overlapping and multiplying until it seemed like 100 voices were speaking at once. "They're following," Martinez gasped from in front of me. I risked another glance back. He was right. The creatures were climbing. Not on the spiral path, they were coming straight up the cavern wall, scaling the vertical rock face with terrifying speed. Their claws found purchase in tiny cracks and crevices that a man couldn't even see. They moved like spiders, defying gravity. And they were fast. Much faster than us. "We're not going to make it," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "They're going to catch us. Keep climbing," Davies shouted from ahead. "Don't look back, just climb." We climbed. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. My hands were slick with sweat despite the cold. The lamp in my left hand felt like it weighed 100 pounds. But I climbed. The creatures were getting closer. I could hear them now, the scrape of claws on stone, the hiss of their breathing, that alien clicking sound. One of them was directly below me, maybe 20 feet down, climbing with horrible ease. "Please," I whispered. "Please, please, please, ... And then, from above, I heard Samuel's voice. "Down. Get down." I looked up and saw him standing at the top of the spiral path, at the ledge where we'd first entered the cavern. He had something in his hands, stick of dynamite, the fuse already lit and sparking. "Get down and cover your heads," he roared. We flattened ourselves against the cavern wall, pressing into any crack or depression we could find. Samuel hurled the dynamite down into the cavern with all his strength. I watched it fall, the lit fuse leaving a trail of sparks. It tumbled end over end, falling past us, past the climbing creatures, down toward the cavern floor far below. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. A flash of light brighter than the sun, a roar that seemed to shake the entire mountain. The shockwave hit us like a fist, pressing us against the wall. Rocks and debris flew past us, peppering our bodies with stinging impacts. And the creatures, they shrieked. A sound so loud and so terrible it seemed to pierce directly into my brain. It wasn't quite an animal sound and wasn't quite mechanical. It was something else entirely, something that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. "Climb," Samuel was shouting. While they're stunned, climb. We climbed. Somehow, despite the ringing in our ears and the pain in our bodies, we climbed. Davies reached the top first, then Kowalski hauled himself over the ledge. Martinez went next, and Samuel grabbed his arm to help him up. I was last. As I climbed the final 20 feet, I looked back one more time. The cavern was chaos. The explosion had collapsed part of the cavern floor, creating a pit of rubble and dust. Several of the creatures lay motionless in the debris, but others were moving, climbing over their fallen brethren, still coming toward us. And in the green glow from that distant tunnel, I saw more emerging. Dozens more. "Brennan, move your ass." Kowalski's voice. I scrambled up the last stretch of path. Kowalski's massive hand grabbed my collar and yanked me over the ledge. For a moment we all just lay there, gasping, our lamps scattered around us. "The passage," Samuel wheezed. "We seal the passage." "How?" Davies asked. "We don't have enough dynamite to..." "The supports," Samuel interrupted. "In the main tunnel. We blow the supports. Bring the whole thing down. That'll trap us in here," Martinez protested. "No," Samuel said, struggling to his feet. "There's enough time. We blow the supports near the back. run like hell for the entrance. The collapse will chase us, but if we're fast enough, ... And if we're not fast enough? I asked. Then we die clean instead of being torn apart by those things, Samuel said flatly. Now move. We've got maybe 2 minutes before they reach this ledge. We ran through the crack in the wall, squeezing through that narrow passage even faster than we'd entered it. The walls scraped my shoulders raw, but I didn't care. Behind us, we could hear the creatures, that horrible clicking, hissing sound echoing through stone. We burst out into the main tunnel of the Serpent's belly. The familiar rough-cut walls and timber. Supports had never looked so beautiful. Samuel, I shouted. Where's the dynamite? Equipment cache, he gasped, pointing down the tunnel toward the entrance. 50 yards. Davies, help me. Kowalski, Martinez, Brennan, start running for the entrance. Now, don't wait for us. We're not leaving you, I protested. You are, Samuel snapped, because someone needs to warn the others. If we don't make it, you have to seal the main entrance. Understand? Whatever it takes, those things can't reach the surface. Kowalski grabbed my arm. Come on. He's right. The 3 of us started running down the tunnel toward the entrance, while Samuel and Davies headed for the equipment cache. My lungs burned. My legs felt like rubber. But I ran. We passed the marker for 500 feet from the entrance. Then 400. Behind us, I could hear muffled shouts, Samuel and Davies working frantically. Then a hissing sound. Fuses. Faster. I screamed. 300 feet. 200. The explosion came. Not one blast, but several, staggered by a few seconds each. Boom, boom, boom. The timber supports were blowing, one after another. The tunnel shook. Dust and small rocks began raining down from the ceiling. IT's collapsing. Martinez shouted unnecessarily, 100 feet from the entrance. I could see daylight ahead, blessed, beautiful daylight. But behind us, the collapse was coming. I could hear it roar like 1,000 waterfalls, the sound of millions of tons of rock crashing down. 50 feet. The entrance was right there. But where were Samuel and Davies? Keep going. A voice shouted from behind. Samuel. He and Davies were running, barely visible through the dust and debris. Don't stop. 20 feet. Kowalski reached the entrance first, bursting out into the cold January air. Martinez was right behind him. I was third, practically diving through the opening as the roar behind me grew to a deafening crescendo. I hit the ground outside and rolled, covering my head with my arms. A blast of dust and debris shot out of the mine entrance like a cannon, coating everything in grey powder. And then Samuel and Davies came tumbling out, coughing and choking, falling to the ground just as a final massive rumble shook the earth. The mine entrance, the mouth of the Serpent's belly, collapsed completely, buried under tons of rock. For a long moment, we just lay there in the dust and cold, gasping for breath. My ears were ringing. My whole body ached. But I was alive. Is everyone... I coughed, spitting out rock dust. Is everyone okay? Define okay, Martinez croaked from somewhere to my left. Slowly, painfully, we got to our feet. We looked like ghosts, covered head to toe in grey dust. But we were all there. All 5 of us. The mine entrance was gone. Where there had been a dark opening into the mountain, there was now just a wall of collapsed rock and timber. The Serpent's belly was sealed, and whatever was inside... Callahan, Davies said suddenly. Callahan's still down there. Callahan's dead, Samuel said flatly. You saw what that thing did to him. Even if he survived that, he's buried under 1,000 tons of rock now. He's dead. We have to tell the others, I said. The rest of the crew. We have to. I stopped. The camp was in sight, down the hill from the mine entrance. And standing in a loose group, staring up at us, were the other 10 members of our crew. They'd heard the explosions, seen the dust. They knew something terrible had happened. What do we tell them? Martinez asked quietly. The truth, Samuel said. At least part of it. We tell them there was a collapse, that we lost Callahan, that the mine is unstable and needs to be permanently closed. And the creatures? I asked. Nobody would believe us, Samuel said. Hell, I saw them and I barely believe it. No, we seal this place, mark it dangerous, and we never speak of it again. But what if they dig their way out? Davies asked, his voice shaking. What if they find another way to the surface? That rock fell deep, Samuel said, though he didn't sound entirely confident. Blocked the main tunnel for at least 200 feet, maybe more. And even if they could dig through that, it would take years, decades, maybe centuries. And maybe, he paused, maybe they'll stay down there. They've been down there for God knows how long already. Maybe they prefer the deep darkness. You don't believe that, I said. No, Samuel admitted. But it's the only hope we've got. Asterisk, the company investigation took 3 days. A suit from the mining company came up from Winnemucca, inspected the collapsed entrance, interviewed all of us separately, and wrote up his report. His conclusion: unstable geological formations had led to a catastrophic collapse that killed foreman Patrick Callahan and rendered the mine permanently unsafe for operation. The Serpent's belly was officially closed. The company wrote it off as a loss and moved their operations to a different site 20 miles away. Most of the crew went with them, eager to put distance between themselves and that cursed place. But the 5 of us, who went into the deep cavern, we couldn't forget. We'd agreed to keep the truth to ourselves, to never speak of what we saw. But that didn't mean we could stop thinking about it. Asterisk. I saw Martinez 2 weeks after the collapse. He'd lost weight, looked like he hadn't slept in days. I keep hearing them, he told me over cheap whiskey in a Winnemucca saloon. In my dreams, that clicking sound, and I see Callahan's face when that thing grabbed him, the terror in his eyes. Try not to think about it, I said, knowing how useless the advice was. I've been researching, he continued, his voice low, going through old books, talking to the Indians around here. And there are stories, Brennan. Old stories about lizard people living in the caves. The Paiute have legends about them. They call them different names, but the descriptions match. Underground dwelling creatures that preyed on humans thousands of years ago, before they were driven deep into the earth. Those are just legends, I said. Are they? Martinez asked. We saw the carvings. That wasn't just primitive art. That was history, documentation, a warning from people who lived down there, who built cities in those caves, until the lizard people came and slaughtered them all. I had no answer for that. Davies left Nevada entirely. Last I heard, he'd gone back to Wales, back to coal mines that stayed in nice, safe, sedimentary layers and didn't go deep enough to wake anything sleeping in the dark. I couldn't blame him. Kowalski stayed with the company, moved to the new mine site. But he was different, quieter. He refused to work the deeper shafts, always found excuses to stay near the surface. The other miners joked about it, called him yellow, but those of us who knew the truth understood Samuel was the worst affected. He'd been mining longer than any of us, had survived more than any man should. But the cavern broke something in him. He started drinking heavily, talking to himself more than ever. 6 months after the collapse, he walked into the desert one morning and never came back. They found his body 3 days later. Exposure, the doctor said. But I think Samuel just didn't want to live in a world where those things existed. As for me, I left mining entirely, went back to Pennsylvania, got a job in a factory, married a good woman, had children, tried to live a normal life. But I've never forgotten. Every nightmare for the past 44 years features that cavern. Those creatures, those terrible, intelligent eyes. Asterisk, I'm an old man now, 77 years old, writing this in 1950. 44 years after we sealed the Serpent's belly. My wife died last year. My children have children of their own, and I know I don't have much time left. That's why I'm writing this down, because the world needs to know the truth, and because I'm not the only one who's seen them. 3 months ago, I received a letter. No return address, postmarked from Reno, Nevada. Inside was a newspaper clipping and a handwritten note. The clipping was from a Nevada paper, dated 1912, 6 years after our encounter. It was a short article about a mining operation near Lovelock that had discovered a series of deep caves. The caves, according to the article, contained strange carvings and mummified remains of creatures that defied classification. The mine was subsequently closed and the caves sealed for public safety. The handwritten note said simply, "They're still there. They're waking up. Someone needs to know." It was signed, a survivor. I don't know who sent it. Another miner who'd encountered them. A geologist who'd seen the carvings. Or possibly someone who knew what we'd found in 1906. I started doing research, as much as an old man can, and I found other stories. Small articles buried in old newspapers. Legends from native tribes across the Southwest. Reports of mining operations mysteriously abandoned. Always the same elements: deep caves, strange carvings, reptilian creatures. In 1911, a mine near Tonopah was flooded and sealed after workers reported hostile wildlife of unknown species in the lower tunnels. In 1917, a copper mine in Arizona was closed after 3 miners disappeared in a newly discovered cavern system. In 1923, an oil drilling operation in New Mexico broke through into a vast underground chamber, and the entire site was abandoned within a week. The pattern was clear. We weren't the only ones who'd found them. And they weren't confined to one location. They were everywhere, sleeping in the deep places of the earth, waiting. Asterisk, I've spent the last 3 months writing this account, getting every detail down as accurately as my failing memory allows. I've described the carvings, the creatures, the cavern. I've included dates, locations, names, everything I can remember. And now I'm going to do something that will probably make me sound like a crazy old man. But I don't care, because what I saw in that cavern 44 years ago was real. The creatures were real. And I believe they're still down there, beneath Nevada, beneath Arizona, beneath half the Southwest, sleeping, waiting. Here's what I think happened. Based on the carvings we saw and the research I've done millions of years ago. Long before humans walked the earth, these creatures were the dominant species. They built cities underground, vast civilizations in cavern systems that spiderweb through the Earth's crust. They were intelligent, possibly more intelligent than us. They had technology, culture, maybe even things we'd call magic if we saw them. But something happened. Climate change, maybe, or some kind of plague. Or maybe they just went to sleep. Hibernation on a massive scale, waiting for conditions to improve. The civilizations collapsed. The cities fell into ruin. The survivors retreated deeper and deeper, until they were just remnants in the lowest, darkest places. And then humans came. We started digging, mining, tunneling into the earth for coal and gold and silver. And occasionally, rarely, we dug deep enough to find them. To wake them up most of the time, I think they kill whoever finds them and then retreat deeper. They're not ready to reclaim the surface. Not yet. But someday, ... Someday, we're going to dig too deep in too many places at once. We're going to wake up enough of them that they can't hide anymore. And when that happens, when these intelligent, powerful, ancient predators emerge from the deep places in force, ... God help us all. Asterisk, I know how this sounds. I know people will read this and think I'm senile, or lying, or suffering from old mining injuries that addled my brain. I know the rational explanation is that we saw some kind of animal bears, maybe, or wolves, and in our panic and the darkness we imagined them as monsters. But I know what I saw. Those weren't animals. Animals don't carve cities into stone. Animals don't look at you with eyes full of cold intelligence. Animals don't grab a grown man and lift him like he weighs nothing. Those were something else. Something older than humanity. Something that remembers when the earth was young. I'm leaving this manuscript with my lawyer, with instructions to publish it after my death. Maybe someone will read it and believe. Maybe someone will take precautions, will mark the dangerous areas, will stop the deep mining operations before it's too late. Or maybe this will be dismissed as the ramblings of an old miner who spent too many years breathing coal dust. I don't know. What I do know is this: the Serpent's belly is still sealed. I checked as recently as last year, drove out to Nevada, hired a guide, and found the old mine site. The entrance is still collapsed, covered with 44 years of weather and erosion. There's no sign on it, no marker warning people away. Just a pile of rocks on a mountainside that looks like any other pile of rocks. But I stood there, in the cold November wind, and I listened. And I swear to God, I heard something from deep below. A sound like breathing, like something massive and ancient, sleeping fitfully, dreaming of the surface world it once ruled. I don't know if the rocks will hold forever. I don't know if they've found another way out, or if they're content to stay buried. I don't know if that breathing I heard was real, or just the wind playing tricks on an old man's ears, but I know they're down there, in the deep caves beneath Nevada, beneath all the Southwest, beneath places no human has ever seen. They're down there in the darkness, waiting, and someday, somehow, I fear they'll come back. Asterisk, so that's my story. That's what happened in January of 1906, when 6 coal miners descended into a cavern beneath Nevada and found something that shouldn't exist. 5 of us came back. Only 3 of us are still alive. Me, Davies, if he's still alive, in Wales. I haven't heard from him in decades, and Kowalski. Martinez died in 1932, Samuel in 1906, shortly after the incident. Callahan never came back at all. Now it's your turn to decide what you believe. Do you think I'm telling the truth? Do you think there really are ancient, intelligent, reptilian creatures living in the deep places of the earth? Or do you think this is just a story, a fiction dreamed up by an old man with too much time and too many nightmares? I'll leave that for you to decide. But I'll tell you this: the next time you hear about a mine being mysteriously closed, or a drilling operation suddenly abandoned, or a cave system marked as too dangerous to explore, maybe think twice about the official explanation. Maybe ask yourself what they really found down there, and if you ever find yourself working underground mining, drilling, spelunking, whatever, and you break through into a cavern that feels wrong, that has walls covered in ancient carvings, that has air that tastes like fear, get out. Get out as fast as you can, seal the entrance behind you, and never go back, because some things are better left, buried in the dark. Some things should stay in the deep places of the earth, and some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again, asterisk. Asterisk, before you go, I want to ask you one more time. What do you think? Are the lizard people real? Could there be ancient civilizations sleeping beneath our feet? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and let us know, would you have gone into that cavern? Would you have explored the deep places? And whatever you believe, sleep well tonight. And maybe, just maybe, be grateful that you're not sleeping underground, where old things dream in the darkness.